sort of attention here.
Will it though? It is still there, so of course one of these champions is going to come through. I have a suspicion it's going to be the Cassidy.
It might be, and I wonder if that means, I wonder if the Dials would take it as a first pick on the blue side. That would break the potential trend of red side winning only. There's the Aurelia ban, interestingly, away from Minky Whale this time.
So that means it's probably going to be two very powerful picks coming through from Legacy. If they do snap off, say, a Cassin, it's going to be the likes of Rek'Sai and another priority champion available. The Hecarim's gone. I think that's the one you have to ban. He's just too good on that champion.
Oh, yeah.
That's the one they play around the best. They probably scrim at the most. It is wonderful playing around Hecarim. What's the last ban, though? What do you ban here if you're Legacy? And to be honest, I don't have a good answer. They don't either. Look at this time.
No, they're using all of their time and come up with Xerath.
Okay.
Picking on Sharp a little bit makes sense.
I like it a lot, just because he showed so much proficiency in that champion. There's so few ways to punish a Xerath if he's able to play passively in lane. And to be honest, Perfection and King are pushing their lanes, causing all that aggro to be forced upon either top or bot. That opens up time for Xerath to just free farm in the mid lane, get to that point where he can just wave clear from 1,000 units away. It's when he's on 600 range or shorter champions that he's actually can be preyed upon, because you know that both top and bot lane are going to be pushing, so you want to gank mid, but Direwolves, they try and force you away from having that option.
And I wonder what Dives want to take. It's Rek'Sai they decide that's the best overall first pick for the draft, and they get it. Rek'Sai a great champion, but that Cassin, if Legacy want it now, they can take it away.
They can take it away. Zed is still banned. I was wondering if that fell through the ban pool. It hasn't. Cassinon's available, but who's going to play Cassin on this team? I'm sure Choo-Choo's and Minky can both play it, both of them noted mage players, but it's a very risky early game choice. We still have limited data on the Cassin, both in the world stage and in the OBL. It's a 100% win rate. Maybe you just go for it.
Maybe. I mean, they know that if they don't take it, Perfection's going to get it, and it is going to be Cassid and Sivir. Two champions that have done a lot of winning recently.
I mean, Sivir today especially has been a very priority pick. The ability to rotate so fast when they're on the hunt. That's the reason that Sivir was reaching those team fights last game, and Ezreal wasn't able to get to them, even with all his mobility, was the on the hunt. So this is a very reliable duo. Not necessarily that much synergy, because of course Cassidon, he can hop, skip, and come to fights very easy with the Rift Walk, but two very popular champions, two high win rates. Bank them in.
And the Dial was expected probably at least the Cassidon to be taken away. Not unreasonable to expect the Sivir as well, so I wonder what they want to answer with now. Lysandra open, but she's been very off basically as far as picks go. Still fine. We saw Choo-Choo's play it very successfully in their win in this series so far, but you know, not a massive priority pick anymore. And looking through, maybe Sion's open. A lot of picks here potentially for the Wolves, and they're going to go with Ezreal and Janna, Truffa's best performing support from the OPL.
The scary thing, though, is they have Cassin and they have the 5th pick advantage, so they can wait till right at the end until they decide which lane to put him into. So Direwolves, they're going to have to make an educated guess. They're going to have to go for a gamble. You still want Perfection on a lane-dominating champion, because that's when they've opened up their 2 victories. But it's going to be difficult on the blue side. And again, red side was the choice from the teams for all 5 games. When they elected their choice, they could choose blue or red. In games 1, 3, and 5, it was Direwolves, and games 2 and 4 was Legacy. They all chose red side, and so far, it's looked a genius move.
Notably, Sejuani left open as well in the draft, so that goes to Carbon, you have to think, as the 3rd pick there. And of course, Annie coming through, another aggressive roaming style support for Regim. Picks make a lot of sense. Sivir Sejuani especially is great. Everything's set up nicely for Legacy. It's just a matter of what do the Wolves want to do now.
No, I really don't like what Direwolves have put out, because there's so much long-range initiation and rotation coming through from Legacy, and they've already got 1 power truff, and the Ezreal has to power up that tier. Suddenly they were even considering the Orianna, which really would be, I think, too much seeding the early game, which is Legacy's best time when they can rotate and get early advantage. They've managed to snowball their advantage so well in the last couple of games. I think they need a bit of mid-game power. I much prefer the Corki. Just go with the mid-lane Ezreal. I think that's what you're kind of shaken out with. But we're waiting for that top lane choice. I mean, I guess it could be a top lane Rek'Sai, but they need to decide soon.
A little bit curious as to why they're going Corki over Graves potentially. He was actually, after I think game 1, just dropped off the series so far. Nobody wants to play him again, and the Dials take their time but mix things up. Perfection needed a carry champion. He's gone to Vladimir.
Vladimir has seen some play in other regions. It's so powerful. And the other thing, it's another champion with basically infinite scaling. The health to AP passive means you can just stack those items. Rylai's so efficient on him. He is a late game. He can deal with Cassidon as well, just because he has so much sustain that Cassidon just can't burst through all the consistent healing he's able to do. Itemizes into Abyssal very naturally. I like it. There weren't many options. I think the Fizz might have been an overreach, especially with all the lockdown coming through from Legacy. Whenever that Playful Trickster was down, he was going to get locked down. But still, this is a very late game comp. and a Corki versus a lot of mid-game power and a Kassadin.
Yeah, now Legacy have to sort of pick their last solo lane. You've got the Kassadin flexibility there. Can go mid, can go top. I'm leaning towards the top lane pick, but Legacy 10 seconds left. They do not have very long to decide what they want to do.
I guess with the Corki pick you were asking about, they had an Ezreal mid, so maybe they just wanted a bit of hybrid damage. Here comes the lock-in. They're going the support route, I guess. I mean, they still have the flexibility. This could either be mid or support, so mid or top at this point. Where it shakes out, I think Minkyu are more of a Lulu player than Choo-Choo's. I'd probably prefer this setup, but I guess it's hard to say.
I mean, it looks like that's what they're settling on, but we'll give them a little bit more time to let their lineup shake out. Perfection on Vladimir, that's the exciting thing here. And again, we talked about it, he needed a carry. This team comp's really interesting to me because it's double AD plus a Vladimir with one tank kind of and a Janna. Dials sort of picked themselves into an awkward spot, but theoretically, at least on the lanes, look totally fine here.
I see, in terms of laning phase, I like what Dials have, but in the team fights, if Kassadin gets big enough, and you have to imagine he has, in the last two performances we've seen on patch 5.5 onwards Kassadin, if you get to the late game, Janna's not going to be able to peel away a Kassadin. That's the big issue. They've got double AD. Ezreal and Corki both have jumps. They both have flash-like abilities and flash, of course, but they can't get away from a Kassadin. There's a lot of lockdown coming through from the Sejuani as well. In lane, you like the Vladimir just fine, or in this case, it's going to be the Ezreal, can actually out-pressure a Kassadin just fine, but in the late game, they don't have the tanky peel for their double AD, so you worry about Kassadin just riff walking his way through the Dials lineup.
I mean, is this potentially another split push situation where Perfection just wants to be immovable in a lane and then never have to leave unless he's teleporting into a favorable situation with Hemoplague?
Absolutely. This is what Vladimir's best at. It's just going in lane. There's so much AoE damage with the Tides of Blood on a short cooldown. You get that ability to force stacks and you just mow down waves. But so can Lulu. That's the issue. Is you're not really going to take turrets against Lulu. She's got just about as much wave clear as you do. So it's going to be able to match a lot of what Vladimir wants to do. And then the double AD, look, they take turrets very fast, absolutely, but they have a very squishy backline and not a lot of tanks or peels to deal with the engage coming through from Annie, from Sivir. The Sivir-Annie combo already can wreck their backline. Sejuani comes through from a flank. It's going to be the same story. They had the 5 pink wards down. That was the big thing, is their flanks were very, very safe. They're going to need to do that again if they want to take down this game.
Yeah, and I mean, again, red side victory so far. We'll have to see if that continues here for Legacy. Unfortunately for them, that's bad news because Dials will get red side on the last game if they win, but maybe even worse news, they have to win at this point. There are no games left for Legacy to give away, and Dials is going to have 2 chances at being our first finalist.
And look, I feel like their comps is really, really strong against what Dials are putting out, but double AD can do some deceptive things. And then when you factor in the Hemoplague, you think, all right, it's a teleport Vladimir. Why doesn't he just go Ghost Flash and just commit to split pushing? Because you're going to really overextend and go double escape summoners. And you teleport in and you're like, okay, he doesn't have much CC, but man, the Hemoplague with double AD is still going to be huge damage. They have mixed damage coming through from both Corki and Ezreal. We know how much damage that mid lane Ezreal's ult does. You just kind of shoot it down bot the moment you hit level 6, and if you just hit the AD carry alone, 350 damage, very hard to trade once you take just a burst of 350 damage. So they're going to try and push waves. I feel like if they can get the Lulu really behind, I don't know if it's a lane swap is necessary, but get to a situation where Vladimir can poke the Lulu out of lane, that's when their strategy looks good. But if the Lulu can keep up, can just counter wave clear against the Vladimir, and they never opt into a fight until Kassadin hits 3-4 items. I mean, Sejuani herself gets, 3,000-4,000 health. I feel like the Legacy will take it.
I mean, if maybe there was one way to try and typify the comp that Dials have, I think Execution Heavy is probably quite fair because, double AD, lots of mobility, not really a tank lane. I guess 1.5 tanks if you factor in the Rek'Sai going tanky plus the Vladimir scaling up reasonably. Difficult for the Dials to pull off, but if they're rewarded with a win here, not only do they push themselves to the final, but in a very unique way, I have to say. And that's scary for whichever team ends up facing them if they make the final.
Yeah, execution heavy, I think, is the right way to look at it. It reminds me a lot of what Legacy were doing in their game 2 days ago with the Zed Vi comp against Karthus. It was a comp where I was like, all right, in a team fight, this is not really going to work out, so they're going to have to really play around that. And then they took turrets, disengaged, never looked for a 5v fight. And a 5v5 fight, and really won the game easily. In this case, of course, they have so much turret damage. They have double globals between Rek'Sai and Vladimir's teleport, so they can be in a lot of lanes and do a lot of pushing. They have potential, but it's just, there's always that specter of Kassadin. And in the OPL, it's completely understandable given we've already seen 2 breakout carry performances, both from the top lane in terms of perfection and the mid lane in terms of cheese on this reworked Kassadin.
And I guess moving over then to Legacy's comp, you have touched on it already, but lots of mid-game strength with a bit of the insurance policy there from Kassadin. What are Legacy looking to do if they're going to try and emulate what we've already seen from them in their recent victories?
I mean, they have less power troughs than the Direwolves comp. Vladimir takes time to go, has to build Will of the Ancients to lane to some degree, which is quite an expensive first purchase. Ezreal, as we know, is going to build tier, and his lane pressure tapers away after that point. Corki's good in the mid game, but Sejuani, notably usually a weak jungler, well, Legacy still have a significant advantage. They want to start getting dragons. That's the big thing for them, is get early dragons to really get their comp going.
I mean, for both teams, that might be the thing, because Direwolves kind of low on threats, arguably, or at least want to snowball something if they have to fight. So 5th Dragon, not too bad for that, but Sharp and Tallywack are going to have a bit of a bout in the mid. Trinket Ward goes down, will spot him off, and we'll see what they want to do. Looks like already a big stack from the Direwolves. They're looking to get some aggressive wards down, and just off screen, they do take out the Trinket.
I mean, the damage threats, I think, from the Direwolves side, I'll have to say, are high based on. I don't think they're lacking any threats. Vladimir's late game damage is so high because it's on such short cooldown. Tides of Blood especially, doing so much AoE damage to complement the Hema Plague. We all know about the transfusion and the annoyance that can cause level 9 onwards. Ezreal and Corki do decent physical damage, a lot of magic damage as well. And Soul Strikes, he's probably going to build tanky. He's probably just going to build a Cinder Hulk, but at that point, he still does good base damages. So I like what Direwolves are doing in terms of damage. It's just there's so much control, and there's just a lot of ability to just add health. This Sejuani could literally win this game with what Lulu can provide her, and just the innate tankiness she'll get through the Cinder Hulk and other items.
Unfortunately, Carbon has not had that much success on Sejuani, at least in the OPL. Doesn't have too many plays on it, but we'll see what he can get done here, and it is clutch time for Legacy as far as they go. They're experienced in best of 5s. They've come back from this exact situation before in a very famous final, but they have to do it against very tough-looking opposition, and if we're going to look anywhere, it's going to be in that top lane.
We are going to look at what is going to be a 1v1 matchup in the top lane. That's the big consideration here. The last 1v1 matchup, I believe, was in game 1 of the night. That did not go well for Minky Whale in that situation. It looks like they're going to get a 1v1 match. It's just fine for Lulu. She'll bully around the early levels before that transfusion moves towards a 4-second cooldown. It's a very safe lane for Lulu. She has the wave clear advantage. She has the poke advantage. It's only after the Revolver comes through, and then, of course, the Woda that Vladimir really gets going in the top.
He's kind of moving down. Carbon now on top of his red buff. We've actually got both junglers on the same side of the jungle, both starting in the top, so going to move down towards the bottom as they do clear it out. Could see a contest for the Scuttle Crab as a result, but we'll see how the early jungle pathing works out.
Sejuani, of course, going to get low on the jungle. Still a very risky first clear. Then, of course, the second clear and onwards is fairly academic. You match that Northern Winds W and just power through at the percentage health damage. The mid lane matchup for Choo-Choos, we say this again, we'll say it once again. Ezreal, with just a Doran Blade, is probably one of the strongest mid laners, just because, again, can trim the waves with auto attacks in the queue, can push the waves well. It's not until he goes back and buys a tier, which offers no combat stats, that he really starts to taper off. But to be honest, Kassadin's going to be powering up as well. So compared to most Ezreal matchups, this is one where you'll probably be able to put on the pressure for the longest.
Yes, that makes sense here. Sharp looking very comfy on, again, a very safe, bit more defensive style mid laner. Here is Soul Strike. We'll get that first Scuttle Crab. It looks like Carbon overdoing his blue, so doing a very deep clear of his jungle, but Perfection in the top, farming up. Again, behind as expected against Minky, but he'll be just fine once he moves towards that rank 9 and the very precious rank 5 transfusion.
The Soul Strikes finally moved in. Would have found a very low health Carbon who just moved away. That's just the difference in clear time. Rek'Sai's so much faster to clear the jungle than Sejuani on the first kill. Soul Strike's in aggressively down the bot.
Ben might actually die. Does clear out the camp, but down the bottom, Soul Strike did go in very deep. Chuffa going to move in, but Tallywack gets the first kill. Now has double buffs on the Sivir, but Chuffa will move away. But a big misstep and a great donation for Tallywack.
Yeah, actually a return kill coming through. Soul Strikes dies first, then picks up the double buffs. Feeling pretty good.
Yeah, and Ejim did go down, so actually a trade, like you said, but I'm totally fine for the Sivir, who was falling a little bit behind on CS in the early levels against the Corki.
But now, double buff transfer is complete, will be the call in team chat. The Corki's going to put them to good use, though, you have to say. It scales very well with all those buffs. Will feel pretty good.
Perfection. Still farming in the top side, evening up nicely here against Minky, who's fairly aggressively pushing in towards the top side of the map. And the Direwolves, I wonder how their Dragon Control is going to be this game, because you're right, they've got a lot of damage, but is it really that bad to have even more damage with the 5th Dragon?
I mean, it's never bad, right? They scale so well with AP. I mean, Vladimir gets bonus health, let alone ability power. with the 5th dragon, but the 1st dragon even is just a big consideration. So as you mentioned, I mean, both teams have a realistic shot at completely monopolizing the dragon. You have to, didn't really take into consideration the fact that although Ezreal starts to cede mid lane advantage after he picks up a tier, Kassadin's not really looking to boss around the mid lane either. So it's so even. I felt the first team to pull the trigger and get that dragon control might actually go on to just have a stranglehold over this mid game. As Perfection, my goodness, he falls low.
Carbon potentially doing something quite dangerous there, but Vladimir safe in the top side, had to use his pull, but got out okay, and Carbon and Minky will now push. I wonder if that prompts the Wolves to take that early aggressive first dragon, but Soul Strikes is already here. Probably not then.
I mean, Perfection's only safety is in that he's not dead. You look at that flashing health. He's on single-digit health. He was so low after the pull. Will live, teleports back, but importantly does not have enough for the Hextech Revolver. Ability power still gives him more healing, but it's not the big burst of healing that is the Hextech Revolver.
No one needs to wait almost agonizingly long for those levels to come through. Level 9 such a precious level for Vladimir. It is for Aurelia as well, but even more so for a champion like Vlad.
I mean, whenever you play Vlad, you remember the times when you're level 16 with a lot of items, with cooldown reduction. You don't really want to remember the early levels where you're just really hoping that the enemy doesn't kill you or turret dive you.
Yeah, and that was, a good move there for Carbon to come up into the top lane and try and take him out. Choo-Choo's actually forced back quite early, but will come back to the mid lane now with a Catalyst good to go. Kind of curious to see Ignite there from Choo-Choo's. Could have had a utility summoner there as well, but definitely a player that always likes to have 1v1 pressure on his opponent.
Well, I think it was a mistake in the first game to not take Ignite in a low-threat comp. In this situation, it's a 2-threat comp. You need the Ignite on Kassadin just because, again, his base damages aren't that great. His late game is wonderful when he gets 4 or 5 items. Ignite just gives you that difference in terms of trades, so pick it up.
Mikuel hitting 6 there as well. Could have potentially flashed on top of Perfection, but he's, again, totally fine. Got 3 points in the queue now. Slowly but surely getting there, getting pretty aggressively zoned by Minky, but as long as he's not dead, he's probably okay.
Absolutely. He wants to keep his turret healthy, and he wants to get levels and experience, and he's doing that just fine. As you say, the CS 10 behind, not ideal, but Lulu was always going to win this lane early. The difference is when he finishes boots, and specifically the Hextech Revolver, it should look a lot better as Legacy. They're using this pressure they have in the top lane to try and go for a very early dragon. Ezreal just back, so they're using that window.
Great timing there by Legacy, and going for another trademark almost at this point. Early dragon, Soul Strikes in the area. Tornado comes in, but Carbon's there with the smite.
There's always that small chance that Tornado takes it. Didn't that time. We wondered who would get that first early dragon control. We suggested it might actually mean mid-game power, and Legacy, they got it.
Yep, they've got a first crucial dragon, and they need the advantages here in this game. Remember, they are down 1-2 in this best of 5, so a win here for Dials would send Legacy packing and ruin their chances of taking another final.
So look, Perfection's already been harassed out of lane again. Remember, this is probably going to be a Morellonomicon rush coming through from Lulu, so that will just cut down the healing once again when he falls below 40%. Has Hextech Revolver, no teleport, though. It's going to have to walk top. Not an ideal laning phase for Perfection, but I don't think he expected anything else.
No, and he's got his tools right now to scale up. Things should get better from this point onwards, but Minky aggressively pushing, playing the early game bully in Lulu quite well, and Sharp doing the same thing here in his Ezreal. Choo-Choo's has fallen pretty significantly far behind in CS. Again, that will start to equalize a bit as Choo-Choo's gets a bit stronger here in this lane, but Dial's taking advantage of the aggressive laner where they can, but unfortunately for them, couldn't get that first dragon.
Decent burst of damage coming through from Choo-Choo's already. Having a look at the skill he's maxing, he's actually maxing the Force Pulse. Of course, the magic shielding that he gets per level won't really be relevant, but trying to hit an Ezreal with Force Pulse is going to be an exercise in frustration with all his mobility, so just go for the consistent and targeted damage when you can.
Yeah, interestingly, doesn't need the wave clear against Ezreal, especially once he gets out of the early levels, so just fine, doesn't need the clear. We'll take the single target trading instead.
It's the battle of low wave clear, absolutely.
Choo-Choo's there aggressively rifting in. Carbon had his ulti, but didn't pull the trigger sharp. Forced to use his flash. I believe Arcane shifted out of the way as well, so possibly an opportunity, but Carbon will take the free summoner.
Yeah, the Arcane shift came in first, then he just basically proactively flashed. Smart choice. You could tell that they were looking for the potential kill coming through from the Glacial Prison combination, so even though in some situations you flashed too early, that was probably the right move.
Now down in the bottom lane now, King slightly ahead in CS here. Leading about 5 there, 70 to 65 or so. But BF Sword up for Tallywacker, going to counter push fairly effectively. And Ejim having a quiet game for him, unfortunately, not able to roam around on his Annie like he might like, but just continuing to threaten the Corkian Junner and keep Tallywacker safe in the early levels.
With no frontliners barring Soul Strikes, late game Civ is going to be doing a lot of damage with that auto attack reset, you have to say. There's a lot of going to be low armor values across the board on the Direwolves side. So in the late game, I think both these AD carries, the Trinity Force, Corki, probably going to be a little bit lower, just being mostly used for structure damage. But Sivir going to be powering down people.
Yeah, can't forget the Ezreal as well. I mean, definitely Minky can help someone get tanky. Carbon will likely get very tanky himself, but pretty squishy on both sides. Lots of execution required here for both teams. Perfection checking back in the top line, still farming away, falling further and further behind in CS, but a 20 CS deficit at this point, given that he still hasn't died. He'll probably take in. Minky threw down a pink ward, but that might have been a bit too aggressive.
That was a mistake.
Yeah, I think was a mistake. Yeah, serious perfection. Continuing on, Carbon still level 6, but hasn't found a good gank for his ultimate yet. Going to farm away, but he just kind of wants that Cinderhawk and will joining whenever he can. Choo-Choo's similar sort of thing going through his power trough right now, so a very slow early game. Just the 2 kills and the 1 dragon so far, but both teams farming away.
If you ask me, who does that suit better, I'd say, both of them to some degree. Kassadin and Vladimir both getting through the laning phase with 20 CS or better disadvantages, which it sounds like a weird thing to say, but both of them are expected to lose lanes, so they just want to baby themselves through the early game. Which champion's better in the late game? I'm going to have to give it to Kassadin just by a hair, as in the top lane.
Soul Strikes there coming in. Good knock go after the Chilling Smite. Perfection going to flash forward aggressively. Gets the Hemo Blade down. Minky with enough shields, but Perfection going in deep. Uses the pull and gets the kill.
Yeah, the pull still gives a very small speed up. Got him in range for another transfusion. Level 8, soon to be level 9, and now a kill credit. This lane phase could change for Perfection.
And the Perfection mechanics coming up clutch there in that kill, and finally a successful gank. Somewhere Soul Strikes, interestingly, the one to get it done, and Carbon, all that CC just nowhere right now.
The Soul Strikes, I wondered if he would do this. I said Cinderhawk, he's not going Cinder. He's gone for the Warrior. They want to finish this game. They want to get a big advantage early. That doesn't mean that they won't be powerful late, but Warrior to me tells, let's start dueling when Sejuani and Kassadin are going through their power troughs, when they only have the Cinderhawk or even working towards the Cinderhawk. Let's fight right now.
Jim starting to roam, but Sharp just arcane shifts away. Choo-Choo's able to bully a little bit better now. Doesn't quite have his Rod of Ages done, but looking to get that in the next minute or two. But Ezreal going through his power trough now with the Mana Mune. You know, Kassadin, when he picks his spots, can just rip off aggressively going, but King going to get locked down. The teleport's going to come through as well for Minky. They really want to get this kill, and they kind of have to with all the resources they committed. Do get it there, but Dragon not available. Maybe can push a turret, but 1 kill for a teleport's very interesting.
And awkwardly, King did flash as well. His death was almost 100% assured, but elected to use flash. Dragon's not up for a minute, as you mentioned, and Perfection, he's going to use this time to push the top lane. He actually went back to buy a Spectre's Cow, and Minky, he might be caught.
Getting slowed there as well. Chuffer going to follow in. Soul Strikes looking for the Unborrow. Wild Growth used instead, but Minky, little too squishy right now with just a Morel and Omicron and Sharp. Going to get that kill.
Yeah, but they do lose the bottom turret, so the bottom turret in a 1-for-1 trade, that's definitely an advantage to Legacy. They were smart to push down that turret. Perfection's doing a lot of damage to top, but it's, pushing's not necessarily Vladimir's strong suit when it comes to actual turret damage. So he'll just kind of focus on picking up the minions and just powering up for late game.
Yeah, not quite level 13 yet, so he doesn't have the massive Tides of Blood AoE to really push things forward, and obviously needs some items coming through as well. Actually going defensive for his second choice there with a Spectre's Cowl after Hextech Revolver.
I think there was just a worry that when you have Morello Nomicon really dealing with a lot of what the Revolver and maybe even Woda would be providing in terms of healing, the extra 8% spell vamp, probably not as much as just having that consistent heal coming through from the Spectre's Cowl. And remember, Vladimir's Tides of Blood actually increases healing from all sources. So the Spectre's Cowl consistently ticking will actually be quite a lot of health regen.
Now the next Dragon going to come in for Legacy's Perfection. Sticking in the top lane, can teleport down if Dials wants a fight for this Dragon. Chuffer going to ward it. King in the area as well, but Sharp crucially backed at a bit of an awkward time again. Not going to go in, but they are going to fight instead. Ejim looking for a stun. Carbon going to go in as well. Chuffer will finally disengage him, but no one porting. This is a 3v4 that the Dials are trying to win, but Legacy get away.
And Legacy get the Dragon. They have 2 Dragons on the board now. The first Dragon will be massive for Direwolves. They have both Corki and Vladimir, who double scale in terms of AD and AP. Of course, Corki to a lesser extent, but really likes to pick up both the statistics. Vladimir gets the health scaling from his passive, but no 6% AD and AP as Minky was in trouble.
Yeah, he's actually Perfection going to dive in. Minky taking too much damage. The Hemo Plague will tick away. It's not enough to kill him. Perfection going to get slowed. And actually takes 2 tower hits. Minky going to line it up again, and Minky just ease him.
We so often talk about mechanics. They completely abandoned Perfection that time. 1 tower hit maybe, 2 tower hits, no. And that's the kill, solo kill for Minky.
Yeah, I like that Minky didn't bother with the skill shot. Just use the targeted ability, get the help picks on him and take him out. But a kill's a kill for Minky Well, and Perfection, who was looking good, had a bit of gold to spend, but had finally got ahead in CS after Minkyo teleported to the bottom lane and does a little bit of that for himself now.
And look, that was absolutely done himself though, Peisham. He was the one that went for the turret dive, then fell. So again, a misjudged damage. We saw a solo kill in the previous game as Fizz misjudging his combination of damage against the Rumble. Does it again here. It worked out for him last game, but don't know if it will here.
And no, not yet, as cooldown boots now to pick up for Perfection. So going for almost a very old school looking build. That Spectre Skull probably going to turn into a Spirit Visage, and it's going to be a big tank Vladimir, I guess. It's the old, very old Reginald build, for any of you who are old enough to remember.
I mean, at the end of the day, like, it's not a big deal to just opt into the Spirit Visage. Like, it still fits his kit, gives him CDR, works with how his Q transfusion works. It's still going to get a Zhonya's, a Death Cap, all those sort of items eventually, but just went defensively for laying the CDR boots, gives him more AoE wave curve, makes him more of a split-pushing threat.
Yeah, and that's what Direwolves need. We talked a lot about Perfection being a split-pushing threat in the last game. Similar sort of thing here, given how fragile the comp is as a 5v5 unit for the Direwolves. So things looking good there. The gold lead actually slightly ahead for Direwolves, but nothing massive. And Legacy up 2 dragons and a couple towers. As we do have a quick pause, style is exploitable. In Legacy, the rotational gods, you have to think in the last few days, they're a team that really can punish that style as we do pop back into the game.
I mean, they can, and they've done it once Space time, but this game's definitely on a nice edge. There's no guarantee they'll be able to do it. And when Direwolves look good, they look real damn good. But Sejuani's actually behind Perfection.
Perfection could be in trouble there. He's trying to get the kill on the Minky. Forced to use the pull early, though. Really wants a kill. Flashes over. Tries to go for Minky. Wild Growth down. Carbon follows him immediately. Minky will be fine, but Perfection will not.
Yeah, Perfection falls down. It was very nice jungle pathing from Carbon to actually get behind Lulu. And just like we mentioned, no sign of a defensive ward around. That's how Direwolves play. They overextend the bottom, but King's gone low.
Tallywacker popped his ulti. Ejim going to line up another stun. Chuffer with no ultimate to speak of. Does have his flash, but gets stunned away. Tallywacker not chasing them, and Chuffer just escapes.
Yeah, just escapes. There was a lot of reinforcements coming through the jungle. Remember, that's a warrior enchant Rek'Sai who still does a lot of relevant damage. Castan's using the time to farm. He's closed the CS advantage in mid, importantly, and that Rod of Age is getting very close to 10 stacks.
Charging up now is Carbon, actually, the next one to get caught out. Soul Strike's coming through with the ports coming around the side from Minky. Well, Choo-Choo's finds Soul Strike's Carbon going to dive back in. Ultimate missing everyone there as it threads the needle for Sharp, and no kills for Legacy, but so much pressure being put on right now.
Excellent disengage from Soul Strike. You forget how much ground you can cover with the unburrow, the burrow into the flash. They're able to hold this mid turret so they don't lose an objective. Direwolves, that's the one thing they want to do. They want to keep this mid turret healthy. It's at 90%, so credit to Sharp so far. But Castan, I believe, is at 8 to 9 stacks, so 10 stacks coming soon.
Yeah, powering up nicely is Perfection. Of course, back in the top lane already. Got an apt tome to add to his recent collection of items in his inventory, but level 11, level 2 Chemo Plague, a very relevant cooldown, but Legacy navigating through now. Tallywacker crucially wasn't there for the push after they pressured out in mid, so couldn't try and get the turret down, but again, things are going just very smoothly here in Legacy. If we're going to look at this game as a couple late game carries being bounced out here, the team with the map control has to win, and that's Legacy so far.
It is Legacy so far, but that never stops Direwolves. They'll keep pushing and hoovering up CS where they can to try and continue to get advantages. King already farming in the bottom on the minimap. You can see no defensive wards. In fact, only an offensive ward coming through on the red side. Perfection keeps pushing in at the top. That's what he does. He's got Soul Strikes this time in his pocket. Remember, he was winning the 1v1s until the help came through from Sejuani, and the help's coming through in multiple ways.
Yeah, even Chopper actually in towards the top. That tower almost down as well, so Perfection looking to get some of that global gold into his team's pockets, but doesn't need too much more help. Dragon up in a minute, so Dials have to think about that. Soul Strikes gonna come forward, but it's just to pick up the turret.
I mean, it's the answering turret, so 400 gold is the minimal lead. Next dragon spawns in a minute. Giving away the movement speed dragon is never ideal, especially against a Sivir comp that will just be basically hitting the movement cap between the On the Hunt and the 5% move speed. They've already got control of this area. Pink ward is down. They're gonna get the Scuttle Crab, double pinks in fact. I don't really know how they can look to fight here, but seeding a third dragon at 18 minutes, that's going to be a very early timer towards the 5th dragon.
And Sharp doesn't have his Trinity Force here either. Doesn't even have the money to buy it, even if he wanted to go back now. And he kind of can't, given all the pressure that's coming through. That big Deathmatch being set up. Soul Strikes will get aggressed on stun moves through. Knockout from Carbon, and Tallywacker gets the kill.
Getting the pick on the jungle. Remember, he does have a global ultimate. Only 28 seconds till he's back.
We're going to see, though, Carbon actually could be caught at King. Massive damage right now with the Trinity Force coming in, but a good ulti there for Carbon. Sharp, though, gets the kill with his ultimate coming through onto the Sejuani. Now, Choo Choo's going to get dove on as King and Sharp, when they team up, do lots of good damage.
And this is the second time we've seen Carbon on the Sejuani. He did get a victory in the first game, but that was the game against Sudden Fear where there were 4 dragons down, a Baron down, but managed to get it into the late game with some very smart rotations. In this situation, he needs to understand that Sejuani doesn't have anything in her kit that makes her tanky, just able to stack the health, but surprisingly squishy.
Yeah, but in those early levels, absolutely. So the dragon is up now. We'll see if Dials want to push in for their first. It's very important. You already mentioned the Vladimir scaling, so the first dragon, even more crucial than before, but they will deny it away, and they do get it. So first dragon goes to Direwolves.
I mean, it's hard to overstate with this team comp. They've got 2 AD carries that build AP naturally with their Trinity Force builds, and a champion that double scales on AP with the extra health. So 6%, it adds up.
It really does, and I mean, there's a lot going for it here. We thought that the team that could snowball the dragon might be the one that really pushes it up, as we do have another pause here as well, as you can see. But, you know, 2-1 now, evening it up. The Direwolves continuing their trend of taking dragons late. They don't really like to contest for the first one, it seems like, but the second and third, they're always there making sure that, you know what, we never want you to get to the third or especially the fifth.
And in terms of priority on dragon in general, Direwolves seem to always have it fairly low. They're more about controlling lanes, pushing out waves, and as we mentioned, getting those hyper carries. And I think you have to classify Perfection a hyper carry when so far we've seen Hecarim, which, okay, a tank, but of course does have the damage options with Trinity Force, into now the Vladimir is the big pick he's gone for, and the Fizz that we saw earlier loves to go for those very aggressive champions. And King, he plays from in front, even on a Trinity Force AD carry, he's always looking aggressive. It's no coincidence he's always under the enemy tower, almost dying to ignite all the tibbers because he plays so aggressively. They have to push laning advantages, and I agree, it's exploitable, but no one's really had the tonic to get the victory against the Direwolves. They've lost twice to the Chiefs when they run wave clear champions. Remember, that was the game where we've seen Perfection on Lulu of all champions, which it's about the opposite of Vladimir when it comes to really being able to take it into the late game and carry. Of course, does a lot of lane bullying, but after that falls apart in terms of damage and team fights. And when they moved away from, say, Morgana mid Lulu top comps, they've looked very, very threatening when they run those hyper carries. So apart from those Chiefs games and the one game against Immunity where they could have won at one stage, they've looked very, very strong.
They've looked strong so far in this series, and we do have another replay as we get through this pause again, and we'll see what happens now.
So, of course, there's going to be some picks coming through. Soul Strikes, he face checks. Well, I mean, doesn't even face check. He just goes a bit too aggressive. He takes a massive burst of damage from 4 people. But just watch Carbon in this situation. So we're going to eventually rotate to a situation where Carbon takes a bit of damage, uses the Glacial Prison defensively because of the Trinity Force procs coming through. That's the power of level 2 Ezreal ultimate. I believe 500 base damage coming from that ability, and just mowed down the Sejuani. And look, Sejuani stacks health. That's the big thing she does, of course, with the Cinderhulk. She naturally builds health, but she doesn't have, say, reduced damage from magic or like magic damage or physical damage. She doesn't have a kit that really makes her tanky. She has basically crowd control from her kit. She has to build the tankiness. And doesn't have it yet.
Yeah, needs to scale up, and that's one of the interesting things about Sedge, and a lot of these tank junglers really, we haven't seen that many of them today. Lots of Rek'Sai, which I suppose is expected given how strong that junglers look for the last few patches, but these tank junglers, they need their time, they need their love to scale up. You know, it's not just getting to 6 for your high impact ultimate or, you know, getting a bit tanky or getting a Cinderhulk. It's more than that. You need to get big, and we've seen super tanks take over games. Dr. Moon has been banned in every single game of this series, and we're still not sure why, but when they get big, they can get massive. But right now, Carbon just not that tanky.
It's kind of the discussion about the Cinderhulk champions is, okay, that item, it's basically like a death cap for health stacking champions because it gives you that extra efficiency on all your health purchases. So you can understand why it's opened up tank jungles as a viable option, but it's not necessarily the must-have tank jungles. You don't necessarily have to have, say, the Sejuani or the Zac, just because the warrior enchant champions still do damn well, and the tank junglers still farm the jungle very, very riskily, especially in the early levels. You fall so low in your first clear. Sejuani in this game, falling onto flashing health. Rek'Sai so much more sustained, of course, when she moves between camps, is so healthy, but I think we see an engage.
Yeah, jumping straight back into the game, and Tallywacker actually gets the kill onto Soulstrike King, forced to run away as Chopper now getting aggressed on by Ejim, and Sivir will run in there. Ulti already used, but duration does run out. A pick there for Legacy, and that's exactly what they need more of.
I saw it on the corner of my screen. Soulstrike was actually tanking the turret aggressively as they did the last bit of damage to the turret. That was the go button. You heard it, the shout coming through from Sivir. They pick up a pick, but what else can they get? It looks like it's going to be, at minimum, the enemy red buff.
And I think most importantly, Ejim wandering through now doesn't have any sidestone charges, I don't think, right now.
Prey.
But he needs aggressive wards, and oh, King. Going to Tally now, does do a massive burst of damage, but Tally, not gun-shy at all when it comes to getting in for damage. And now Carbon going to line things up. Shuffle moving to protect him, but Legacy getting crucial turrets taken down now.
Didn't know that King was in that bush, but there's actually 4 members looking to pick up the kill on the backside. Perfection in top. He's now answering Chuchu's. Chuchu's magic damage shield will be relevant in this situation, but with all the sustain and wave clear, not much he can do to a Vladimir.
Perfection getting towards the Fizz split push territory that we saw in the last game, starting to get very annoying, very immovable from this top side of the map. And the question this time is, who can answer Perfection?
I mean, look, if you're really on spot with your timings, Chuchus, if Perfection takes another couple of turret hits, maybe you have a window to take him down, but he's too smart a player to do that. He has the Ignite to at least deal with some of the healing coming through, but honestly, we've seen it quite commonly on Cassidy. Maybe the Muralonomicon for a second one on the team might be a smart purchase.
Maybe, and Chu chooses force Perfection out for now, though I think he wanted to shop more than anything else. Third turret actually going to Direwolves. That's quite surprising, given all the pressure that Legacy have applied to structures, but Riskutler going to go down there as well. No Dragon quite yet, but they'll take the vision and the free gold while they can. And lots of movement back and forth. Legacy now rotating around, but they could be caught here. Soul Strike going to move in. They want Tally, but Tallywhacker not messing around on the damage front. Chopper gets stunned up and killed.
They want to get any pick they can to force this turret down. They need to pick up this third outer turret. They've struggled to do it for so long. Ezreal has his ultimate, so this wave shouldn't be enough to push down the turret. But all these picks, they're looking for this global goal.
Great ward there from King as well, knowing that walking through there is quite dangerous, and Chuchu's was desperate for an assassination there, but doesn't get a Perfection even doing in for a short while there. And you can see the poke onto Annie, who's very squishy. Muramana not even transformed yet for Sharp, and is already outputting massive poke.
Yeah, I'll check in with the Muramana. 748, in fact, just about to be transformed. Power spikes upon power spikes. They've got the Trinity Force. They've got the Muramana. Trinity Force completed, soon to be a Blade of the Ruin King, so respecting the consistent chase power coming through from, I guess, Cassidy and to a lesser extent Sejuani as well. I mean, Direwolves have a lot of power spikes across the board, not necessarily for Perfection yet, but man, he split pushes pretty damn well.
Yeah, I'm going to look through some of the Direwolf item timings coming through as well. We talked about the Muramana transformed. Blade of the Ruin King second is coming through for King, so a very aggressive build, more for dueling potential than anything else. Actually going to help take out some of the tankier health stackers here as well with Lulu and Sejuani in particular, but I'm looking towards the top lane right now, as we have been doing for a lot of the game. Perfection, I am fairly certain he's building a Rylai's.
A Rylai's? I mean, Rylai's is one of the best items for Vladimir. It gives him AP and health, so he double scales on that item. Used to give him about 100 AP when it was more health-centered, but now it comes with 100 AP, so it'll be more than 100 AP. And again, it makes him even better in a split push scenario, because when he hits that first Q, it's a single target spell. It's 35% slow for a second and a half, and it's only got about a 3.5 second cooldown. It's not Cassiopeia when it comes to chasing, but it's not too far away.
It's really not, as Carbon actually smites away the Raptor, so keeps that safe. King, though, pushing in, and this is the siege potential, I guess, of the Direwolves comp. They've got decent poke, they can move in clear waves relatively swiftly, and when they get on top of targets with the double AD, they do good damage, but grouping at this stage when you'd probably rather be split pushing with your Vladimir is a curious choice, I'll say.
I don't like the sheer 5-man stack just because Sejuani gets the perfect ult. We already mentioned it. There's no tank on this lineup. There's an Aegis and some cloth armors to complement the ultimate. We might see the go.
Going straight in. Chopper and Soul Strikes get 2-man ulti. Perfection gets knocked up there as well, though he's in the pool now, trying to get away. Pops his Hemo play back. Minky going to keep himself safe. Carbon off to the side a little low, but will be safe. A 2-for-2 trade there, but the Direwolves are still pushing.
They're still pushing. Of course, Perfection will heal up so quickly. Flashing health bars are enough to continue their push, but they do not have a minion wave to be able to do turret damage, even with their double AD. Still very healthy.
Yeah, Perfection keeping his Tides of Blood stacks as well, so if they go back in, it'll do pretty good damage. Tallywhacker blocking poke there, King taking damage now. Ejim, though, has to be careful. Good double stun, but Perfection there with the pull. Carbon going to force the flash out of Sharpest. Perfection going to get chased down and killed. Sejuani getting that kill as Rek'Sai going to move around, but Legacy say, okay, we'll fight you if you want to come through. Now 3v4. No one else forthcoming. Chopper running back up the lane, but Choo Choo's has to back away in a very odd trade.
It's just a very poor rotation coming through from Doubles. They have to understand that Perfection's at the point where people can answer him, but they can't stop the split push because he has so much sustain. Okay, they have double AD, but it should be a 4v4 and a 1v1, or maybe even a 1-3-1 split push. Do not put 5 members together until Perfection has another item, or at least level 16, to really prompt a team fight, because Sejuani's the go button. Even though she's fairly squishy, she still has a ranged AoE stun.
And speaking of go buttons, Choo Choo's as his glowing bright red right now. He's just got his Zonas. He wants to go in so bad. Sharp gets poked out. Sharp are going to disengage Ejim. Going to get down quite low here as King. Also with Minky off to the side. Perfection gets to go into Ejim. Minky will fall off to the flank as well on Legacy. They have such good 5v5, but they split up around the Dragon.
Carbon Crushi didn't have the Glacial Prison, but yes, the split away, not grouping their threats was a significant problem. Suddenly the Dragons are all squared up. The gold is all squared up. This game could not be closer at 26 minutes in.
The gold is dead. Even the turret's almost even. The Dragons very much even. And now the Direwolves look for a push. Death time is quite low here, so nothing major going to happen potentially. But Double AD pushes fast, and they will get the turret. A knock-up coming in for Soul Strikes onto Carbon, wanting that kill. Great ulti, though, coming in, getting onto 3. But they'll dive back in. Carbon immediately cues his way out. And Choo Choo's comes in, but it's too late to save the turret.
Choo Choo's sitting on a bit of gold, had already freshly shopped, got the Zhonya's, and now a 10-stack Rod of Ages. You still feel like this game is still on a knife's edge. We know what Cassidy can do in the late game. When we saw Perfection play that top Cassidy, he was on, I believe, 0-0-0, no score involvement at about 20 minutes. A couple of failed rotations came through from 4-0 where they overstayed, and suddenly he was getting triple kill after triple kill, getting to double-digit kill score by the end of the game. Cassidy can always go off at any point. They change him, they nerf him. He's still the same champion from an identity purpose, so they need to play very carefully and tread very lightly against Choo Choo's Cassidy.
And there is a timer here as well, I think, because Cassidy at some point just basically makes Sharp and King a non-factor. And that's a scary thing to think about if you're in the Direwolf seat.
And was actually what we saw again coming back to that game is there was an engage. I believe it was the post-match replay on that 4-0 versus a Direwolves game where both the double AD, it was actually a double AD in that game as well, was zoned by just the mere threat of Perfection coming in on the Cassidy, just because, again, like, even with escapes, the burst damage can't be ignored, and Aegis isn't going to change the situation at a 6-item Cassidy. Okay, 6-item Cassidy is still a long way away, but unless they break the base, they'll get a significant advantage. Late game Cassidy is always going to be relevant.
Yeah, and it's funny because that's exactly what Perfection was doing on the Fizz in the last game here. So we'll see what point Choo Choo's does get to. So Direwolves, a little bit of pressure, have to sort of press their advantage, but have to do it carefully. Want to rotate around, move Perfection into other lanes, start split pushing, and Rabadon's Death Cap will actually be the pick of hit for Perfection. No Rylai's just yet, just wants big damage.
The crazy thing about Direwolves group is, okay, it eventually got done that in a turret, but remember they have Rek'Sai as well, who has effectively a global with the ability to go through the neural network. At the moment, it's mostly towards the bottom of the map, but as soon as she establishes a bit of top lane tunnels, you can split push. 1-3-1 is so easy. Okay, your core is very squishy, but it's Ezreal, Corki, Janna. Get some pink wards on your flanks. Get some aggressive green wards. Sejuani is very predictable in her engages. With those two champs, you should have a very strong split push. As you mentioned, the death cap comes through, and suddenly Vladimir, that split push is going to be devastating.
Yeah, and the damage as well. Even if they do find some fights that are favorable for them, I still think they want to split up, but maybe now that's the trigger for them to start fighting 5v5. And maybe more importantly than anything, I mean, Janna's great in any sort of skirmish. She's one of the best supports to have in a 3-man stack, in a small stack. But vision has been the problem. All of the vision is neutral here. All the pink wards are sort of laid out on a battle line almost. And the first team to really get an edge and find that control will have a much easier time navigating the end of this game.
And it almost feels like Direwolves' solution to the fact that they can no longer split push safely is to group, when it should just get the damn wards down so you can split push safely. You have the split push advantage. Don't choose 5v5 in a scenario where you're not being forced to.
Perfection, though, going to get onto Choo Choo's, but a shield there from Minky going to make that fairly irrelevant. Death Cap is up for Lulu now as well, so things looking decent here coming through. Actually forced to pull out of perfection there, but we'll be okay for now. Rotations are coming in, and Dials taking over the top half of the map, and crucially, Legacy do not have that mid turret as Soul Strike finds Choo-Choo's and Carbon for the knock-up there. Perfection gonna move in as well, but Shuffer looking to flank now onto Carbon, but taking a little bit too much damage. Ults Carbon back in, Sharp and King have found Choo-Choo's there. No kills forthcoming, Ejim flashing in, but Sharp gets the first kill. Massive ulti coming in for Carbon though. Chopper moving back in, but the shutdown coming to a Sharp will go down, but Perfection far too tanky. That's 3 kills already. Tallywacker trying to get the damage in, but it's a little too late, and he's forced to be back in the base.
We're waiting for them to break the base. They're certainly going to get at least this last outer turret in the top lane. They're backing away. Maybe they're actually thinking about Baron. They only have one of their ADs up, but of course plenty of consistent damage coming through from Vladimir. No smite available, 20 seconds on Carbon. They're going for Baron.
I mean, they have to take it. They couldn't take the top tower in time and still get the Baron. In fact, Tallywacker still going to threaten to steal. No vision yet. Baron dying quickly, but not that quickly. And Soul Strike's getting low to tank it. Minky might even be able to come in the Dials.
This is very risky.
Might have to pull off super risky here, and they're going to stay in. Soul Strike has to leave Perfection to tank now, but Minky and Tally are coming in. If they can catch the Civ, it'll be great. The Baron does go down, and the Dials barely get away with that.
The Dials have so many globals as well. They would have had the global ult coming through from Ezreal. It's a smart pickup, but it was risky. There was always the potential that Soul Strike could be assassinated on the backside. Minky maybe should have just used the flash and gone for the exit kill on Soul Strike, because it just makes the Baron untenable.
I mean, this is the thing, though. Legacy counter-pushing right now with the Dragon back in 45 seconds. That's already good news for them. Sharp returning, and Legacy will finally get the outer mid lane turret at 31.5 minutes into the game. But Baron buffs here for Dials have just gone and done some fresh shops. Whatever your plan is, whether it's stack as 5 or push out with your Baron buff, do something with this Baron buff.
Yeah, do something with the Baron buff. I think they will be able to pastry time. They were almost looking to threaten to break the base before they backed up to pick up the Baron. They have so much turret damage between these two members. They have excellent split push coming through from Vladimir. He has teleport available. So does Minky but Minky does not want to be entering lane against Perfection's Vladimir. How does he keep finding these champions, these pseudo late game hyper carries? The Fizz, I thought that was the last of them. He didn't go for the Fizz in this situation. It would have been a problem to deal with the mobility and tankiness and lockdown that Legacy had. But Vladimir, perfect in this scenario. He's going to keep powering down waves on top. This is going to be the third dragon as well. You're not going to contest a Baroned up Direwolves. And man, this could actually be the Direwolves in their maiden best of 5, hitting the final against the winner of Chiefs Immunity.
Yeah, looking good here. 4K up now for Direwolves, starting to get some of that momentum. Choo-Choo's trying to push, but Perfection will stop that immediately, and Choo-Choo's just can't stand to the now level 16 Vladimir.
And now he's even got the Baroned up minions to help with the push. His turret damage is okay. He's got a ranged auto attack, and he's got, you know, the Baron buff minions and plenty of AP stack coming up for him. Caston's going to be able to buy time, but he's probably going to have to watch as the turret falls.
Unfortunately for Soul Strike's tunnel's not that deep on the other side of the map, but 4-1 now looking so strong. King aggressively Valkyrie in, of course, on the Corki. Baron minions coming in. Perfection getting low. They're getting 2v1 right now with Minky. Choo-Choo's actually used his on his Perfection. Might be able to get away here. Choo-Choo's, though, so many hops there with the Rift Walk. Perfection moving back in. Does have his flash. Pull back in 3 seconds. Choo-Choo's come back in, forcing the flash out there as well. Pull going to come through. No, not quite there enough, but Dial still pushing in. Minky is now forced to teleport back, but Legacy forced them off their turrets.
I'm guessing he used the summer just to buy a bit of extra time to try and get this turret down. They're going to keep pushing on it. They're not going to get it down, you'd have to think. Even with the double AD, so healthy. And Caston, he's backing.
Soul Strike's coming back at Ejim. Wants to flash on someone so bad. Ward doesn't spot him, I believe. Kind of hanging out right in the middle of the base gate. Doesn't have his flash, but it's up shortly. They're going to go in onto King. Ejim's going to pull the trigger. Does find the stun, but he gets out with a Q assassin. Now they're going to turn it around. Carbon will go down there to Sharp. Choo-Choo's is here, but he can't find a foothold in.
And all this time, the Baroned up Siegeman has been hitting that turret. They're going to take it down. I don't know if this is going to be the game. It's 3v4, but there's a lot of turret damage coming through from Direwolves.
But the Direwolves crucially break the base. 20 seconds left for Carbon and Tallywacker. Sharp going to move in.
They look like they're going for the finish.
Ejim, though, flashing in there onto Chopper and Soul Strike, but it's not enough. Perfection now ready to teleport back in, and Ejim's forced the wild growth on top of himself. The first turret goes down. Third kill coming in as well. Sharp going in. There's the fourth, and the Direwolves going to take Minky for the ace, and that'll be game. Legacy, I'm not sure if it's an upset strictly, but the Direwolves will take it out 3-1.
It was a massive performance coming through from the Direwolves, and once again, Perfection. It wasn't necessarily the score, but I don't know how he finds these champions. This champion pool is so much deeper than we expected, Another champion that Legacy just couldn't deal with one member. It was always 2 members. It was Minky that had to go there to supplement Choo-Choo's. If one member can't deal with that against a double AD, you see what happens. Turrets are destroyed, and Dials, congratulations, they're going to the final.
Yeah, our first OPL playoff finalist is the Dials. An amazing performance in a best-of-5 there, 3-1. And we have a replay of that game just to show you a little bit more.
All the Dials fans celebrating. We're going to watch a replay looking at the scores. This is when Dials is just a little bit ahead. So we're going to start up the replay at this point. Soul Strikes have gone in very aggressive. They wanted to get the pick on Choo-Choo. This is where Choo-Choo's falls. I thought they were overextending too much because remember, this is a Cassidy. First, the flank comes through from Chuffa. The ultimate is just beautiful. But watch this last auto attack that takes down Choo-Choo. It was a critical strike Trinity Force auto that did so much damage. The fight continues, but the consistent damage of Vladimir's around. They peel off Carbon. The peel duty from Vladimir, not usually something you talk about, but does have a single CC in the kit. And the double AD, crucially, did so much work that game. We're seeing a lot of double AD around the world, and Direwolves, they executed it very well.
I mean, yeah, high execution is what we called the comp at the start of it. Beautifully played last game there to push Dials to be our first finalist. But with that, we're going to take it out to Atlas to finish us for the day.
Thank you very much, Pastry Time, and what an incredible victory by the Direwolves. 3-1 against the best-of-5 specialists Legacy. So congratulations to them. They're through to the grand final against either Immunity or the Chiefs. And man, the Chiefs looking terrifying, but of course, this is the results of the day. Direwolves taking out Legacy, but tomorrow, the Chiefs going to be up against Team Immunity. Team Immunity looking from that 4th position to knock down our veterans, the Chiefs, from that first spot. It's going to be absolutely gigantic. And then the grand final, the Direwolves already securing their spot, but it is going to be either Immunity or the Chiefs taking out the next position in tomorrow's semi-final. You better not miss it. But that's all we have for you today. On behalf of myself, the casters, of course, Radia, who was here earlier, and our whole production team, thank you very much for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.